Hello, and welcome to Greywood gardening. I planted some bare rootstock of red twig dogwood along this ridgeline last fall, and despite its reputation for being highly deer resistant, during the winter the deer came through and ate every single one of them. However, we had enough snow on the ground at the time that the deer could only eat the top half to 2/3 of it, and everything under the snow was fine, and come spring it all started leafing out. So of course, the deer have been coming back to eat them again. So I'm building little cages for them. This is just a little roll of chicken wire, and I'm using some big metal staples to hold it in place. I don't think this is going to need to be here very long. I suspect that, within 2 to 4 weeks from now, there'll be plenty of other things growing that the deer would rather eat. And once the red twig dogwood gets established, it'll be able to survive a lot of grazing by deer and still grow strong. Well, on this episode, the pepper seedlings that we planted need to be potted up into bigger pots. Also, the ornamental grass in the cottage garden has finally started growing, which means it's time to dig it up and get it out of there. But before we do that, we have finally decided everything that we're doing with the Lower Terrace Garden, and so I've got some seeds to get planted. Let's get started. Here in the Lower Terrace Garden, we already have daffodils planted all along the front, and we have the ornamental lilies that we put over here on this side. And of course, there's this random rhubarb plant that will eventually get moved out to the veggie garden once it's built. I think this corner up here is where we're going to put the dahlias once they're ready to come out, and the rest of it, we're going to plant some seeds. Over on this half, in front of the dahlias and the lilies, we're going to plant a bunch of poppies. And then over on this half, we're going to plant giant zinnias. And all the way over on the edge here, we're going to try planting some autumn beauty sunflowers, which I think are going to look fantastic. And something super exciting I noticed when I came over here is it looks like all of the peonies that we planted are now coming up and growing strongly. Starting with the sunflowers, these are autumn beauty sunflowers from Johnny Seeds. They're absolutely gorgeous. I have planted them once before, but rabbits ate all of them just as they came out of the ground, so I never got to enjoy any. Hopefully we have slightly better luck this year. Sunflower seeds are really easy to plant. The seeds themselves are fairly big, so it's easy to handle them one at a time. And really, we're just going to shove them in the ground around a ½ inch deep. Ultimately, this is a branching type sunflower. Ultimately, we probably want these to be a foot or two apart. But if all of the seedlings survive and get their true leaves and start growing, I can just come through and thin them just like I would with seedlings that I'm starting in a tray. All right, next we're going to plant some zinnias. I have zinnias from Johnny Seeds, which is a Benary's Giant mix, which look great. I also have a pack of a free gift of zinnia seeds I got from Eden Brothers when I was ordering other stuff. So we're going to go ahead and mix both of these together and just scatter them over the area. All right, so the goal here is to get this handful of seeds spread fairly evenly across this area. And finally, we have the poppies. I got 2 varieties of poppies from Eden Brothers that are annuals. We have pepperbox poppy and Hungarian breadseed poppy. So it's a bright pink and a purple one. Again, I'm just going to mix all the seeds together and scatter them across the area. Poppy seeds are pretty small, so I want to be careful that I don't dump too many of them in one spot. I'm not worried about stepping on the seeds that I'm putting down, because honestly, if I step on them, all that's going to do is help firm them into the ground a little bit better, which will help them make better contact with the soil, which means they'll take up moisture better and just germinate faster. And as always, the final step is to water everything in really good. Once you have everything watered in really well, you can just leave them. The seedlings will sprout eventually without a whole lot of effort from you. But if you really want things to grow as quickly as possible, you should actually come out and water every single day until the seedlings start to come up. It's just like when you start seeds inside, you need to keep the soil wet in order for that water to penetrate the seed coating to trigger germination. And then, once the seedlings pop up, you can scale back on your watering to just once every few days or once a week or whatever's appropriate for your weather. Now, these flowers really aren't going to bloom until August, but I'm super excited to see them come up and to see the display that we get toward the end of summer. Welcome back to my seed starting lair. It is time to pot up the peppers. In fact, it's past time to pot up the peppers. I even have a whole bunch more stuff that needs potting up. Potting up is probably one of the gardening things I hate most. I would much rather just plant things in the correct size pot to begin with and not have to do the incremental repotting and repotting and repotting. That seems like such a waste of time. But the reason I don't do that is because I only have a couple of small heating mats, and if I planted all of these peppers and all these tomatoes in full-size pots to begin with, they wouldn't all fit on the heating mats. So here we stand. All right, potting up, super simple process. We will start here with our cayenne peppers. And I'm going to pot these up into 4-inch pots, which is about the right size for these peppers that'll be planted out in another 3 to 4 weeks. Don't really want them outside until a little bit into June. So all we want to do is add a little bit of soil, a little bit of potting soil to the bottom of the new pot. And then try to gently ease the plants out of their existing pot. Ooh, which that is not too hard. Look at that. I don't know how well you can see this, but beautiful roots all around. Not root bound, but very full. Now, we're just going to get soil. Pour it around the edges. We want to make sure we gently firm that soil in so it's not too loose. All right, and that's all there is to it. Just put the tag in. I will water this well. And then this plant will be ready to grow on for another 3 to 4 weeks until it's finally ready to move outside. Of course, I hope I will have some garden beds built for it to be planted into by that time. All right, and now I just have to spend the rest of my afternoon doing a whole bunch more of these. As you can see, the ornamental grass here in the front of the cottage garden is coming up strongly, which means now is the perfect time to dig it up and move it. So all I'm doing here is getting the shovel in the ground as far as it'll go so that I can get as much of the roots as possible. And then I'm cutting around in a circle to cut out the chunk of grass that I want to move. So we're ending up with something about like this. And as you can see, that's a lot of dirt and roots on each chunk of grass. And this is what we're going to take and transplant up by the veggie garden. Mrs. Greywood has decided that she wants this ornamental grass to be planted here on the side of the slope leading up into the veggie garden. Now, my only concern with this is pure sand underneath this light layer of compost that I put down. So one thing I will be doing is when I dig out the holes, I am going to put a shovelful or two of compost in the bottom of the hole, which is normally not something I would do, especially when transplanting grasses, which are very hardy. Well, like so many projects here at Greywood, this took a lot more time than I had planned. A total of a little over 4 hours to dig everything up, and we've rolled over into the next day now. We also had to find new locations to plant the grass because we filled up the entire bank that we were originally planning on. While I was digging up the grass though, I dug up one of the original tags from when they were planted, who knows how many years ago. So now we know what kind of grass it is. It is perennial miscanthus red flame, or Miscanthus sinensis variety purpurascens. It was really gorgeous last fall, yellow and orange in the sun, so I really hope that it takes hold in the new locations that we've planted it so we can enjoy it again this fall. Now all I have to do is fill in this giant hole with compost, and then this job will finally be done. I wanted to show you these tulips that we potted up last fall, and that frankly are not doing very well. I used a mixture of sand and compost for the potting medium. I think that's probably the problem. I think it's not draining well enough, so the bulbs got soggy, or possibly the sand is too fine to allow for enough air around the roots. All I know is I'm pretty confident that if I had just bought some potting soil, these would be growing just fine right now. I think that if you look forward 5 years or 10 years from now, I truly believe that Greywood is going to be a very special place. We have a lot of ambitious plans, we have a lot of energy to make those happen, and I think in the future it's going to be pretty amazing. But we're going to have a whole lot of failures like this along the way, I can assure you. Sometimes things go wrong and there's nothing you can do about it. You've got weather, you've got disease, you've got animals eating your crops, and other times you make a decision that turns out to be a boneheaded one. The important thing is, as long as you do a lot of gardening stuff, plenty of it is going to work out well, and a bunch of it is going to be amazing and better than you had thought. And yes, there will always be some stuff that doesn't work out, and that's part of it too. Well, that's all I have for you on this video. Next time we should be finally tackling getting the wildflower seeds in the yard. So until then, happy gardening.